May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today, I'm going to do two things now. First, I'm going to talk just a little bit more about Hozan Alan Senaki, and then I'm going to give you a report on the month I just spent in Germany with Dharma Sangha in the Black Forest, founded by Richard Baker. As for Hozan Alan Senaki, he's I did the podcast last week about him, I told about his situation, how he'd back in December of last year, he'd had a heart attack and had went into a coma afterwards, and he suffered a lack of oxygen, I guess, which is what has left him without the ability to use the lower part of his body. So, anyway, he's still teaching, and you can. He's still going to meetings. He's still functioning as the abbot of the Berkeley Zendo, and I think he's on half salary right now. Anyway, it's very amazing how well he's doing. And you can keep up with him at his Caring Bridge page. Just go to Caring Bridge and search for Hozan Alan Senaki, Senauke. And just today, Lori, his wife, writes that, what isn't today? It's October 3rd. Many of you made generous donations on GoFundMe. And I've been pondering what is an appropriate response for your gifts. Earlier today, Susie Thompson came over to sing with Alan, and I somehow managed to capture 1 minute and figure out how to share it. So she put a minute of them singing, and, Alan's in bed. He gets up with a helper, and gets in a wheelchair. And anyway, so look, to go to his GoFundMe page, you need to write Hozan, Hozan. That goes to it. So that's it. I just wanted you to know that I wanted to remind you of that. Now, last week I'd said I'd feature his second podcast from a year ago. I did a encore presentation of his first one. But look, if you want to hear it, just go to cuke.com, hit the button for the podcast page, and then just search for Alan, A-L-A-N, or Senauke, S-E-N-A-U-K-E. You know how to do a page search. You hit Control F on a PC or Command F on a Mac. And that'll give you a link to his page, a link to his podcast, and Yeah, that'll work. Oh, well, I haven't mentioned in this podcast yet that in case you don't know who I'm talking about, Alan is, oh, no, I did. Never mind. So, okay. So now I'm going to talk to you about Germany. So back on August 25th, I flew to Zurich, actually, through Doha. And I was picked up at the airport by Manuel, who's a student at the retreat in the Black Forest where I was going. And he's German, but his parents, he said, were devout Catholics and had given him the name Manuel. And I realized I'd never thought of that. I've lived in Mexico. I've been around a lot of Manuels. It's from Emmanuel, like Jesus. You know, there's a lot of Jesus down there, too. Look, I posted something on the Kook.com's daily blog, which is on Blogger, and I'll read you that, which gives you a brief report on my experience there. Okay, now it's called The Page. It's a page on Kook.com, too. Is this on Kook.com? Yeah, this is the page on Kook.com. But it's the same. Well, it adds to what there was on Blogger. And how do you get to it? Go to Zentatsu Richard Baker page on Kook.com, and then there's a link to him. Right. Well, the heading here says Zentatsu passes the mantle on to Tatsudo. So that means Zentatsu Richard Baker passed the abbotship of Dharma Sangha onto Tatsudo Nicole Baden. And then my report, there's other things here, is labeled the ZBZS Mountain Seat Ceremony Weekend. Now, I used to call this place Johanneshof. Actually, I still do, because that's the name of the original building, which was a Rudolf Steiner school of some sort. And but now they have the Hof House, which is just across the road from it, which is, they're both very large. And they really needed that to expand the potential of the, to realize the potential of the group. And actually, there's more than that. A bunch of students, people involved with Dharma Sangha, bought a building. There are 15 of them, and it's got 7 apartments. And then the house, they're all built from houses, farmhouses, and they're very large. Most of the farmhouses around there have a barn under them, which, various things, some of them are still using them as a barn, but they've been remodeled into other uses. So this house that they bought, actually it's just part of another one, I guess they're right up next to each other. It's just like a 2-minute walk from Hof House. So there's 15 people bought it, and they just, reserve they reserve a place for when they want to come. And so that's worked out really well. And now Dharma Sangha is buying another building, which was the mayor's office. And this is an entirely Catholic community, which has let Dharma Sangha know they have their blessing to buy this building because it's not needed by the local government body anymore, or the community or whatever. So they'll have an apartment building there too. Anyway, it's a very vibrant group. It's very impressive. So so I, like I said, I call it Johanneshof. I'm used to that. But the name is actually Zen Buddhistisches Zentrum Schwarzwald. That's ZBZS, and that means Zen Buddhist Black Forest Center. I don't think it's the best name. I don't know. There's not a good name to call it anymore. I think we ought to keep calling it Johanneshof. That's a nice name. ZBZS, that doesn't have enough soul. But anyway, that's not our problem, huh? So here, anyway, all right. So here's what I wrote. From late August to late September 1st, I stayed a month at Zen Buddhistisches Zentrum Schwarzwald, ZBZS, the Zen Buddhist Black Forest Center of Dharma Sangha, founded by Zentatsu Richard Baker. I stayed in Johanneshof, once a Steiner school, one of the two neighboring places that houses the center. The other is a large house shop building called Hofhaus. It was my fourth extended stay there in 24 years. Every time it gets better. Most of the time it was me, Zentatsu, a few staff older but younger than us, and mainly young students practicing there who were a pleasure to be with. The reason they kindly flew me there was the mountain seat ceremony for Tatsudo Nicole Baden. The ceremony weekend was on a grand scale. There were two very large connected tents, one for ceremony and one for dining. 250 people came, started arriving earlier in the week. Hoitsu Suzuki and his son Shungo came from Rinso-in, which I'm sure most of you know was Shunryu Suzuki's temple in Yaizu, Japan. A delegation came from the San Francisco Zen Center. David Zimmerman, SFCC's Central Abbot, Fu Nancy Schroeder, Topha Green, Vicky Austin. Also, Nyoze Kwong, Abbot of Sonoma Mountain Zen Center. There were 2 shifts of morning zazen, 5:30 for those staying in the nearby building and 7 for those coming in by shuttle. Friday afternoon was Zentatsu Richard Baker's stepping down ceremony. The morning program was hosted by Paul Rosenblum, people speaking about Richard. Me first, Michael Murphy and Jerry Brown via video, and a panel which included Fu Nancy Schroeder. Saturday morning, there was a panel talking about the future of Zen in the West with Shungo Suzuki, David Zimmerman, and a few others. The others were Germans. And I want to get, there's a few people whose names I want to get in there. There's a bunch of pictures on this page, but I don't have the names. I only have the name of one German person there, Ulrike Greenway. Well, Nicole Baden, she's German. Hoitsu gave a talk that was well received. Saturday afternoon was Nicole Baden's Stepping Up ceremony, the first hour a profession going from place to place outside of the tent where the ceremony proper was held. The congratulations at the end took up another hour. Simultaneous translation of German and English was on large screens. Next to the tent was a massive camp kitchen with large ovens, dishwasher, prep tables, refrigerator truck. There was a staff of about 20 preparing, and they were, Zen students, Dharma Sangha students, preparing 3 buffet meals a day, cleaning up and taking care of everything else. An ice cream truck rolled up Friday after dinner with 2 scoops for everyone. Choice of flavors. Dance with lights and mist and DJ Saturday night. The dance floor was crowded and lively due to there being so many young people. The Sunday closing ceremony was brief and informal. There was constant mingling all weekend. I spent time with the Suzukis, Kamala and Tom Buckner, Vanya Palmers, Nyoze Kwong, Norman and Kathy Fisher, Maria Del Rocio Hernandez, Vicky Austin, who helped with the ceremonies, David Zimmerman, Fu Nancy Schroeder, Tova Green, Ted Howell and his wife April, Zentatsu's 3 daughters, Sally, Elizabeth, and Sophia, his amicable ex, Marie Louise. A quick hello to David Schneider, who had to leave too soon. Lots of Dharma Sangha dear friends, too many to name, mainly European, and Alan Julseth, an American who's been in Germany for 40 years. Good vibes all around. When it was over and the guests departed, the whole place rested for 2 days. No schedule, no communal meals. DC. All right. That's what I put there. Let's see. Oh, yeah, when they do things like that, like if they have a day off, it's really a day off. There's no meal served, there's nothing, but you can go raid the kitchen. It's a pretty loose place. It's really nice, and there's always plenty of leftovers. And but 2 days of that, because this was such a big event. I mean, well, of course, it's the biggest event in the history of Dharma Sangha, which, good Lord, how far does it go back? Oh, Richard Baker founded it probably in the late 80s in Santa Fe. Well, anyway, he was teaching in Santa Fe, and then they got Crestone Mountain Zen Center, which I've spent time at too. So, hey, I've got a question for you. This, I say in there that this is my 4th time to be there. Now, I first went there in 2000 when Richard Baker married Marie-Louise von Baden. And I was there this time. And that was 2000. This is 2024. And I was there 2 times, equidistant from, I was there two other times. The first time for about, a couple of weeks or something, 2-3 weeks. But I wasn't there the whole time. I went to Felsentor and saw Vanya Palmer's place above Lake Luzerne. Good Lord, that was fantastic. And I visited with people that, Vanya sent me to a Buddhist friend of his who was in the Trungpa, part of Shambhala. And that was in Innsbruck. He had the oldest hotel in Innsbruck. And I stayed there. That was neat. And he said that Mozart had slept in his office. And I went to a few other places. That was neat. But I really enjoyed Yohannesov. It was just going there. It wasn't real old. It was a few years old at that time. And so, all right, I've been there 4 times in 24 years. And and the space between each is the same. So, how many years is between each time I went there. So I'll give you 10 seconds to think of that. All right. That was an estimate of 10 seconds. How many years were there between each time I went there, if I've been there 4 times in 24 years? If you thought 6 years, you're wrong. It's 8 years. Because I went through that. I went, every 6 years. And then I thought, wait a minute, no. The first year was at 2000. The second year was at 2024. So, what's a third of 24 is 8, because there's just three spaces in there. Anyway, I think about stuff like that all the time. So while I was at Johanneshof, while I was there, I got there, like 10 days. No, not. When did I get there? I got there on the 28th of August. And so I got there like 9 days before the ceremony. So I helped out a little getting things ready, but mainly, I did some dusting and stuff, but they said I didn't have to do anything. In fact, they've always done that with me. They're very nice. But I'd help dry dishes after meals. And I worked. I worked on Cuke Archives, and I worked on a book that, I've talked about Tassajara stories, which I've been working on forever. And while I was there, Shambhala and Counterpoint had both already turned it down. I thought Shambhala would for sure, because it's just not the sort of thing they do. It's sort of a mess, It's not. It's all over the place, With it's Tassajara stories, right? And it's not all Tassajara. It's like a memoir, and there's history. There's a memoir. I tell stories that have nothing to do with Tassajara. It's, what was going through my mind and other people's minds and what was going on in the country and stuff. It's sort of the way I'm describing it in the introduction, which I need to get written this month, or the preface, is there's a thing called shake, which is... in a Japanese garden, the shake is the borrowed scenery, is whatever exists outside of the garden. So, that I include so much, just everything I threw in the kitchen sink. It's the shake of living at Tassajara. Tassajara is not a bubble. We don't want to be in a bubble. We don't want our practice to be in a bubble. And actually, I didn't make it that way because I had the opinion that it shouldn't be in a bubble or anything. It's just what happened. I just wrote what I wanted. So I was hoping Counterpoint would take it up because they're a little more like into literary stuff and everything. But no. And so I told Arnie Kotler, who, incidentally, if you want anybody to help you with editing a book or getting a book deal or anything, get hold of Arnie Kotler. And if you need to get hold of him, don't know how to, just send me an email, dchad@cuke.com, dchad@cuke.com. So I let Arnie know. And I said, well, I guess I'll just self-publish it and make an audiobook. I said, I think the audiobook might be pretty cool. And he said, well, why don't you try monkfish? He said, I'm working with them now on some book having to do with Mel Weitzman's work on Suzuki lectures or something like that. And so I went, all right. So I sent them book one because Tatsara Stories is so long that I divided it into 3 books. Now, it still could be one book, but it could be one book, part 1, part 2, part 3, but it'd be awful long. And I sent them part 1 and a little note about Shake and my attitude toward it. And they wanted it. My God. I really didn't expect that. So I signed a contract with them while I was there. And it's due. I told him it was ready right now. You can have it right now. But then I started looking at it. I've gone it over so many times with Peter Ford and Wendy Piercig. But every time I go over it, I go, oh, my God, I'm glad I went over it then. Good Lord. So now it's just part 1. They're going to publish it as part 1. And and so it's going to be called they suggested calling it a sort of oral history. And I said, well, it's memoir too. So it's going to be called something like a sort of oral history memoir of the first Zen Buddhist monastery in the West, of Tassajara, the first Buddhist monastery in the West. Year 1, 1967. And maybe add with Shunryu Suzuki. Pretty long subtitle. So, I might have mentioned this in a prior podcast, and if I have, I'm sorry. So anyway, that's one thing I was working on. And, hey, one thing I did while I was there is I was talking to people who are, into audio-visual stuff. And one guy, his name was Dominique. He was a college student. He was just there for a couple of weeks. He was a college student majoring in machine language, which he said is what they call AI. And I asked him about ChatGPT. And he said ChatGPT is his best fellow student to talk to about AI, machine language. And he just had the highest regard for it. And my son, Kelly, same thing. Kelly said, oh, this is what I've been waiting for all my life. And Kelly's very involved in all sorts of stuff. I can't get into that. So I got it. But hey, if you get if you get it, don't just go, don't go to look to buy ChatGPT, because I initially bought it as something that was bundled in with another program, and God, was that a mistake? So, but anyway, I could cancel any time. So I ended up, maybe that was the free first month, or I paid for 1 month or something. And no, he said OpenAI is what you want. Get in ChatGPT with OpenAI, and then you can just have it in your browser, or you can have it as an app, or you can have it as both, which is what I do on my Mac, on my PC, and in my iPhone. And I haven't used it a lot, but it's been so impressive. And one thing it wasn't good at was, at least at first, you can sort of train it. Listen, it makes mistakes. It's like dealing with a person. And you don't have to write things carefully like you do on Google search. And it's much, much, much better. But I asked it about Shunryu Suzuki, and then it listed some books about him. I said, hey, that's not all the books about him. What about Zen is Right Now? Because it had Crooked Cucumber. It had Zen is Right Here. It had To Shine One Corner of the World, which was the prior version of Zen is Right Here. But I said, hey, you forgot Zen is Right Now. And it goes, oh, you're right. Zen is Right Now. And then it gives a description of it. And I said, all right, what about, there's the doorbell. I'm not going to answer it. Our housekeeper's going to take care of it. I already told her what to do. What about Remember the Dragon? Now, Remember the Dragon is a book that Gil Fronsdal put together for, I think, like the 2000 Stanford Zen Center Symposium or conference on Shunryu Suzuki. And it's is Remembering the Dragon, Memories of Suzuki Roshi from Zen Students. And, it draws on stuff from Cuke.com, other sources, and was put together pretty quick. And it's small, and it's got some nice images, and it's cool. But it's on Cuke.com, incidentally. And it's available from the Zen Center office. So I asked about it. I wanted to see if it found it. And it did. It did. But you know what it said? It said edited by Steve Weintraub. I went, no, it's not. It's edited by Gil Fronsdal. I went, oh, you're right. But then it said Steve Weintraub, and it had a bad description of it, a wrong one, like associating himself with other books and stuff. I said, you're making stuff up. That's wrong. Steve's not involved with any book I know of. Or if he is, I don't know about it. I said, don't make stuff up. Sometimes I've seen it can try too hard. But that was about the only case where I found that level of mistake. I asked it about climate change. And it came with a really good summary of climate change. And then I said, yeah, but you're listing everything as equal. These aren't equal. The threat of rising oceans and the temperature aren't equal. And it said, you're right. And it said the temperature is much, much more serious, and people are dying now from it and everything. And of course, the what's happening with the oceans, people are dying too. But the rising oceans are not going to destroy the human race. But what they call wet bulb temperature can. And that's the one to pay attention to. I mean, there's many, many consequences from climate change. And a lot of them are going to cause a lot of suffering and a lot of difficulty. But this is my opinion. And there's going to be more disease. Just like where I live here, dengue is on the increase, and that's no fun. Katrinka had dengue. But the thing that I think that will get us, besides starvation and all sorts of stuff, it's just the temperature. And the wet bulb temperature means including the humidity. And when you get to a certain level of what the wet bulb temperature, and there's disagreements. I've seen as low as like 85 and as high as 95 wet bulb temperature. It's lower than you'd think. It's if you can't get away from that wet bulb temperature, your body cannot adjust. It eventually will die. And so we agreed about that. But then I said, well, what are the solutions? And it came up with good solutions. And I said, yeah, but the human race does not seem to be responding well enough. And then it came out with a really good, essay. It was more like bullet points, each one of them being a little tiny essay or a little paragraph. And I was extremely impressed with that. So anyway, I just wanted to say that about ChatGPT. It's $20 a month, and it's better than Google for a lot of things, but I still use Google. I was working with, I was communicating with Amber Hoadley and Bill Porter, Red Pine, and a fella, Isaac, Isaac, about Silas Hoadley's rock suit. Isaac, for some reason, has it. And he wanted to know the meaning of it. And he'd gotten hold of Zen Center and asked if they wanted. And they said they'd be honored to have it. I suggested Amber have it. That, Zen Center, I said, it'll end up going in a box and getting eaten by moths or something, I think. But it's a beautiful rock suit. It's got beautiful calligraphy by Suzuki Roshi. So he sent me a photo of the front and the back of it with the calligraphy. And then we worked on the meaning of the calligraphy. Well, all those old rock suits had the robe chant, the Daizai Ge Rapuku Musofuku Dene Hibu Nyorai Kyo Kodo Shoshujo. The great robe of liberation, a field far beyond form and emptiness, wearing the Tathagata's teaching, saving all beings, something like that. And so we put that on Silas's page, incidentally, and we did. Peter Ford did, but I wasn't sure about some things. I knew. I knew that was the robe chant, the first 4 rows of calligraphy from the right side. And I knew next was Silas's name. There was, but I wasn't sure. Amber said it was Soke, which she said meant auspicious ancestor. Oh, that's what Suzuki Roshi had told him or something. She'd heard that. And so I didn't know. I could see the character for ancestor, but I couldn't remember anything else. And the character for upper in the second name. I mean, there's 4 characters, and most of us have, we have 2 names. Suzuki would give us 2 names, and he would underline one of them as the one we're called. And then I sent the picture. I said it said January 11, 1971, and Suzuki signed his name Zenshin Shunju. So, hey, he gave himself the name of Zenshinji. But he did that a lot in informal stuff like that. Zenshin, we ought to just call him Zenshin. We shouldn't call him Suzuki. I mean, we don't call Dogen, I don't know, whatever his family name was. And Shunju is too hard to say. I use Shunju a lot, and I think it would be better to call him Shunju. But people say, people can't pronounce. People don't know how to pronounce the Japanese R, which is in the front of the mouth, which is easy. It'd be easier to pronounce it like it was Shundyu, Shunju, like that. That's sort of what I do. I mean, it's not like Japanese do, because they do like a D-R-L sort of thing, But anyway, so I sent it to Shungo Suzuki in in Rinso, and he said it was. He said the character before Soke was a character meaning bestowing. In other words, giving this name. Soke, and the next characters were Josa. And he said that's the rank. And Josa means high rank. It means high seat. I'm sorry, high seat. And so we've been having discussions about that with Bill Porter and Shungo and me. And I said, well, the second two characters I thought were just our name, part of our name. I was Kisan Zenu, and Suzuki would underline which two characters were what you would be called. I said, but Bill Porter said that shows his rank. But Shungo said the same thing. He said his name is Soke, and Josa shows his rank. Well, and Bill Porter wrote, he said, high seat. That's because the teacher's sitting in a chair and everybody else is like on tatamis. So still, I said, well, we all got four characters, and maybe the two that weren't underlined were like commentary on the name. But we've always related to it as that's our Buddhist name, all four characters. So I said, well, I'll get hold of Shohaku Okamura about that in Bloomington later. I have a list of things to talk to him about. And he could probably clarify that, maybe. Anyway, that was just something that was happening today. And I got into that because it talked about chat GPT. GPT. Oh, I forget. It's chat GPT, I think. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And, it's going to evolve and everything's going to change. And, we don't know what is going to be happening. We're all concerned about who's going to be elected president. The Americans are. Well, Europeans are too. But there's big waves that are much bigger than that, and they're going to come crashing down on us and change us. Some of them maybe for better and some for worse. And we've got stuff to deal with that's beyond anything that we're dealing with right now. So let's see. What else happened while I was in Germany? Well, I worked on Tassara stories, like I said. I loved what I want to say about being there at Dharma Sangha. I always love being there. It is so cool. It is, and maybe I've said this in a prior podcast. I hate to be one of these older guys that is always repeating the same things. I knew I do. But I wrote the preface to a book on Dharma Sangha. There was sort of an in-house thing. It wasn't anything published at large. It was in German. And I certainly didn't write it in German. And I told about a guy, a friend of mine, Balthasar, who studied with LaSalle, who was a Jesuit priest who had studied Zen in Kamakura and became a teacher. And he anyway, Balthasar was a very serious student of his for many, many years and was actually offered transmission and be his successor and everything, but he didn't want it. He's a neurologist and a therapist, and he's a little cynical about Zen and very, he's got a critical eye. And I met him in one Zen place, and we talked to people there and everything. And we went to Luzerne and met with Richard Baker, and they got along. And Richard back then, that was 8 years ago. Richard was staying with in Vanya's. Vanya has an apartment in Luzerne, separate from his house, where he can go do things and or have guests stay or whatever. And then I hung out with Balthazar for a couple of days in Zurich, and I'll tell you, I can't do anything unless I'm staying with somebody there. It's like, you got a hotel, it's like $200 a night for anything. And then he drove me in his convertible Mercedes, which a friend of his had given to him when he died, had left him in his will. He drove me to Johanneshof, which is an hour and a half away from Zurich, right? And we had lunch with people. I showed him around. And when he left, he said to me, and he had said that the first Zen place where we were, he said, it's a little precious. But when he left Johanneshof, he said, I like this place. I like the people. They're normal. And I consider that the highest compliment he could have given. And I know there's plenty of Germans who are neurotic and screwed up, and they have a lot of neo-Nazis and stuff. But all the Zen people I've been with, they're just so not on any trips and not into a whole bunch of issues and stuff. They're just really good, solid people that are good to sit with and work with and meet with. And it's very good. And they're no stinkers, and they're realistic, They're not all planning to become priests or anything. Some of them will, but that is not the dominant thing happening there at all. And Nicole Baden, who's now the abbot, she doesn't have a mate, but she's certainly not celibate. I mean, she's just been busy with practicing there. She's been very, very focused on practice in Johanneshof and Crestone, where she spent time. She's also the abbot of Dharma Sangha America now. And Richard Baker's retired. He says he's looking for a job. But anyway, I really enjoyed being with the people there. I spent a certain amount of time one-on-one talking to people. Mainly I was working in my room. And I love walking in that area. I don't walk as well as I used to. I'm 79 now. And one thing I think is really interesting is that, Richard Baker's, he's 88, right? And he's using a cane. He was in remarkably good shape mentally and physically. But he says he's looking for a job. And he says he's got this, he said for the first time, he doesn't have that sense of responsibility where everything is on his shoulders, or he's not trying to do something new. He will. And that's just, he'll be doing that. But anyway, there's less responsibility. He feels he is enamored with Nicole Baden. He said she's a better teacher than him. I never heard him say stuff like this. He said she understands things better than him. And she's very practical, too. She just pulled a deal to get the funding for this new building they're getting with the apartments without any down payment. When COVID hit, Johanneshof did better because of her leadership. she immediately, they hadn't done anything online. And she got hold of Zentatsu and said, oh, that's Richard Baker, right? She said, hey, we got to start doing Zoom and, having teaching online. And he said, well, I only do things, in person, this and that. She said, we'll go broke. We won't be able to pay the bills. He said, okay, tell me what to do. And so they've developed quite a, quite a presence with Zoom and teaching online. I don't pay much attention to that, but it has really helped them. But of course, they're in Germany and at Crestone in Colorado, Crestone Mountain Zen Center, they have in-person stuff now. Crestone is it needs more people. It needs Crestone just barely gets by. I encourage everybody who doesn't know what to do, go be a student at Crestone Mountain Zen Center. It's really incredibly beautiful. It's about is it 8,500 feet or something up there? I know what I wanted to say. So, we don't hear much about COVID in Bali, where I live. There is some here, and there might be a whole lot later. But the COVID I hear about is in America and Europe. And while we were at Johannesburg, while I was there at the Dharma Sangha Center, there was 1.5 different people had COVID. Now, Kelly, my son Kelly, right? We talked about it in the podcast with him. When he went to Tassajara, he said Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, was the way it was relating to COVID and all that was like it was in the very depths of the pandemic. It's like he had to have 3 tests. One before he left, one when he arrived on the plane, and one when he got to Tatsujara or something like that. And and I've talked to other people. They're right on the extreme end of caution, right? Boy, Dharma Sangha is the complete opposite. Paul Rosenblum got COVID. There were like 5 people with COVID, and they had there was no response. And it didn't spread. Everybody knew it. Nobody had to wear a mask. Nobody said you had to keep a distance. It was not even discussed. I mean, everybody knew it. And I was just so surprised. And, then 5 people had it, and then eventually nobody had it. I just found that so interesting. I would say it's a woke place, but it's a different type of woke. They'll be good to anybody that comes along. Anyway, that's probably enough, huh? I love being there. Well, let me say a few things about Zazen. I love sitting in that zendo. It's a gorgeous zendo. Well, I don't know. We sat in the morning. What's there to say? We sat in the morning. We sat in the evening. I really liked sitting in the evening. And the schedule would change there. But what we settled into was 2 periods in the morning, 1 in the evening. The 1 in the evening was like at Tassajara, 30 minutes, then a 5-minute interval, and then 30 minutes. In the morning, there were 2 periods. So I went to 2 periods a couple of times, but then I thought, no, because I was working till 11 at night. I thought, I'll just go to the 2nd period. So that worked out. And in service, one interesting thing was Richard Baker would do service. He would sit in a chair, and Nicole would leave service, or Paul Rosenblatt. Actually, I did see him lead service, but he didn't bow to the floor, you know. And he said, well, you know, you can sit in a chair during service because, you know, I have a little trouble walking and with balance and stuff. But no, I didn't want to do that. The more I walk, the better it is. But I was very slow bowing and then getting up. And eventually, actually, it took too long for me to figure this out. I stopped bowing down because it was, you know, it was just, I couldn't, because I was sort of hanging things up and it was too obvious. You know, people must have been worried about me. So what I would do is I would bow down to the floor the first time, and then I'd just get up on my knees and bow down from that. And that worked. And then I had time to get up after the third one. You know, but I could sit with crossed legs. Although I sat there a lot, I just sat mainly with what they call tailor position or Burmese style, with instead of lotus having that leg down. It's funny because here where I'd sit half lotus, either right or left half lotus. But there, I don't know, I got sort of lazy. And also it wasn't quite as comfortable. I've got my sitting thing here down where I can sit an hour and it's not overly difficult or anything. But there, I don't know, sitting with the Zafu, I haven't sat with the Zafu in a long time. I would get, you know, the nerve be pinched and stuff. And I thought, that won't happen if I just keep my leg down. All right. Well, I want to say one other thing. Richard Baker gave me a cane. And I told him, I said, you know, I said, 3 people, 3 staff came up to me in the airports on my way there and said, do you need assistance? We can give you assistance. So obviously, just watching me walking, what they could see, because, you know, my balance isn't as good. So I'm not walking as straight. I tend to veer a little to the right, a little more like a drunk, you know. And, I mean, you know, I feel totally normal, but that happens. Anyway, Zentatsu gave me a cane. He said, use a cane. And, you know, I told him, I said, my doctor, my main doctor here at the local hospital, every time I walk into her office, she goes, do you use a cane? You should use a cane. So he gave me a cane, one of these canes that comes apart and you can make it smaller. And he said, it'll help you out in the airport. And boy, was he right. You know, I get at the Zurich airport and I'm getting ready to walk toward this longer line. And I have a backpack on, a rather small backpack, and another smaller carry-on thing. It's just hanging from me. It's you know, it's like a purse or something, but it's not a purse. And it had like my wallet and my passport and things like that. So I had this cane, and I'm walking toward getting in the line, you know, to check in, and a man comes up to me and says, "This way, sir." And I said, "Oh, I'm all right. I can get in there." He said, "No, you're paying my salary." And then he takes me to a, what was it? It's not VIP. It's priority. Yeah, he took me to a priority line. Yeah, where there were 3 people in line. And but the funny thing happened in Doha where I changed. Right? The plane, you know, I just get on and they're all nice to me. But the plane at Doha, they were so busy, it didn't have a gate to land at. So it landed on the tarmac, and steps were brought, those rolling steps were brought up. Actually, they had several of them. They had them in the back of the plane, too. And they wouldn't let me take the steps. Anybody that had a cane, and there were other people who needed wheelchairs. There were about 5 of us. We had to all have somebody taking care of us. And we went down like an elevator that was up there. So we couldn't walk downstairs. They had this, thing that we walk out on a platform. No, they made me get in a wheelchair to be pushed out onto it. And then it goes down, and then we get into a bus. It's all a bus of cripples, right? And then we finally get to the main building, right? We get inside, right? I said I can walk from here. I like to walk. It's really good. I've been sitting in the plane for a long time, and really, a very nice guy. He was black. All the guys taking care of the cripples were black. I don't know if they were Africans. I think they were Africans who were living in Doha, right? And because these places like Doha and United Arab Immigrants, all those places and they have tons of business and tons of people around the world living there and taking care of services. People from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from Philippines, from Africa. So anyway, I sort of had to be in the wheelchair, but that was fun. Being pushed around in the airport that way and going, and then finally got to one of these carts where there's like, you've seen them in airports if you go to airports, where there's like room for like 2, 4, 6 people in them, and they're like a little bigger than a golf cart, right? And then it took us to a central area where we were to sit in chairs and wait until they would guide us to our gate. The only thing is, my plane was a few hours off. I wasn't going to sit there. And so I walked off and had a nice time. And walking around Doha, I mean, it's like being in a giant mall. And finally, I got to my gate before the plane took off, but that guy who was there, the guy who had been pushing me around the wheelchair, he was responsible for me, and he had to sign me off. What they'd done is they'd taken my boarding pass and scanned it. So he had to scan it that I was at the gate, and he did that and walked off. Anyway, that was neat. And ever since I came back, I've been walking with a cane, and it is so much better. And also, if you happen to come across a aggressive dog, which is very rare here, but when we walk our dog, it's not aggressive against us. It can be aggressive against our little Bondi. Pretty rare, but it can happen. Anyway, it's nice to have that cane. And I like walking with it. It makes it easier to walk. I feel like I want to walk further and more with it. It's like having not another leg. I guess it's like having a cane. So anyway, that's all. That's the end of this deranged podcast. I just wanted to tell you what it was like in Germany. It was good. Oh, and God, I've got to tell you about Paul Rosenblum. He was so helpful to me. Paul Rosenblum, he's a supporter of Cuke Archives. But, I needed, somebody went off with my sandals. I don't know. It was weird. I went off with somebody's sandals by accident, and I got them back to them. And my sandals, my really good ones, they're expensive, Tevas. And, they have like Velcro straps. And They're for walking longer distances. I use like Zoris, but good Zoris with arch support for shorter distances. But somebody took my good Tivas. But like I said, I took somebody else's. They looked almost the same, and I returned them to the office, and they found the person. They sent a person had already left, sent a photo. Yes, that's theirs. Thanks a lot, and that was taken care of. But they hadn't taken mine. So Paul bought me a pair. Amazon Prime. Boing, and they arrived like 3 days later. That was really nice. And he got me tea. He was sending me things. He was there at first, and then he went off, but we stayed in touch. But anyway, he was very helpful. He's been an assistant abbot there. I guess he's going to continue to be an assistant abbot. He gives talks and leads services. Anyway, I said there's, I talked about all the young people. There are some older people, not as old as me. Dieter, he's so wonderful. I met, Dieter's been around Dharma Sangha for decades, and he is just the model monk. He is humble, he is helpful, he is friendly. There's just not a slight bit of judgment in him. There's no Zen sting. He's everywhere. He's the Eno. And, so he leads services some, depending on who's there, because Nicole and Zentatsu are out doing seminars and things to keep the place going. And, they have outreach. But then he'll be in the kitchen doing dishes. He'll be, I don't know, he's just really good. And then Ingrid in the kitchen. Oh, she's just so nice and so humorous. And she's the tenso. They don't use that word. She's the head cook. Maybe they say tenso. I didn't hear it. And Uli. Those are the older people. Uli is a woman. I don't know. She's like in charge of programs or something. Sylvia was a little bit older, maybe, Maybe Sylvia was in her mid-40s or something. And she was in charge of the whole weekend of ceremonies. So many nice people. Andrea and Anna in the office. Everybody. I just really liked it. So, and I wanted to mention Hoitsu and Shungo Suzuki. Now, Hoitsu is Shunryu Suzuki's son, right? And he just turned 84. And he is so spry. I was so impressed with him. Actually, I was impressed with Zentatsu, too. I mean, he's 88, and he's doing really well. And Hoitsu, though, he's 84, and he's considerably more spry than I am. I was really impressed. But also, it's just such a... He aside from being a really good person and good to relate to, very thoughtful and everything, when he gives a talk, it's very impressive. And he is still leading training at a Soto Zen training center in Okayama Prefecture in Japan. I lived in Okayama Prefecture for 4 years, but I never went there. I didn't even know about it until he told me about it. And his involvement with that, and actually his whole prestigious career with AH and everything, all happened after I left Japan in 92, I believe. I mean, he'd been at AH before, but it was like he went from really, I mean, when I used to talk to him, it was like, I hate Zazen. I don't want, my father didn't like it. He didn't want to do the job of running the temple. Hoitsu liked running the temple and liked being with the lay people and all that, and having all the mundane relationships. But gee, the next thing I know, well, a decade later or whatever, he's at Eiheiji. And then he continues at Eiheiji. And anyway, just really fine guy. And he gave a really nice lecture there. And Shungo, I hadn't seen Shungo since he was like in his 20s or something. Now, he has become a really solid, mellow, I think he's 50 or something. Maybe he's 54, but he looks like he's 34. But he's very, he's just really solid, like I said. They're so thoughtful. Anyway, it was really good seeing them. I can't find the words to say how much I respect them. And Zentatsu and Nicole, I had a wonderful time there, but that's enough of that. I went on for a while about Johanneshof, about ZBZS, and that's what happened. And this has been a Kook audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Kook Audio and Kook Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sonora with Doggy Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.